Tonight we begin in the shadowed aftermath of the Crucifixion, when the sun dipped below the horizon and the streets of Jerusalem fell silent. A clandestine struggle began, one that would ripple through centuries, its echoes felt in whispered tales and guarded secrets. The body of Jesus, revered by his followers as the Son of God, had been taken down from the cross, wrapped in linen, and laid in a tomb owned by Joseph of Arimathea, a man of wealth and quiet influence. The Gospels, those sacred texts that would later be canonized, tell of a resurrection, a miracle that transformed the world. But beneath the surface of this divine narrative, another story unfolded, one of human ambition, desperation, and the relentless pursuit of relics that could wield power over hearts and empires. The tomb, hewn from rock and sealed with a stone, was no ordinary resting place. It was a focal point of hope, despair, and intrigue. The Roman authorities, wary of the unrest Jesus' teachings had sparked, stationed guards to ensure the body remained undisturbed. Pilate, the governor, had no patience for further rebellion, and the Sanhedrin, the Jewish council, feared the followers of Jesus might steal the body to fuel claims of a miraculous return. Yet even as the guards stood watch, the first threads of a secret war were being woven. The bones of Jesus, whether they remained in the tomb or not, became a symbol of something far greater than flesh, a prize that could legitimize faith, sway nations, or destroy the fragile movement that would become Christianity. In those early hours after the crucifixion, the disciples were scattered, their courage shaken. Peter, the rock upon which Jesus had promised to build his church, hid in fear of Roman retribution. Mary Magdalene, devoted and grieving, lingered near the tomb, her heart heavy with loss but a light heart with hope. It was she, according to some whispered accounts, who first noticed something amiss. The stone, she claimed, had been moved and the tomb was empty. The Gospel of John would later record her encounter with the risen Christ. But there were others, less devout, more pragmatic, who saw opportunity in the absence of a body. These were the relic hunters, men and women driven by motives as varied as faith, greed, and political ambition. The first to act were the Zealots, a faction of Jewish rebels who saw in Jesus' death a chance to rally the people against Rome. To them, the bones of a martyr could be a powerful symbol, a rallying cry for those who dreamed of a free Judea. A small group, led by a man named Baruch, infiltrated the garden where the tomb lay. Baruch was no believer in Jesus' divinity. He was a pragmatist, a warrior who understood the value of symbols. Under cover of night, they approached the tomb, expecting to find it heavily guarded. Instead, they found the Roman soldiers dazed, muttering about a blinding light and a figure that had vanished into the dawn. The stone was rolled aside and the tomb was empty. Baruch, undeterred, believed the body had been taken, not by divine intervention but by human hands. He vowed to find it, to wield it as a weapon against the oppressors. Meanwhile, in the upper rooms of Jerusalem, the disciples grappled with their own confusion. The empty tomb was both a miracle and a crisis. If Jesus had risen as Mary Magdalene insisted, where was he? And if he had not, who had taken his body and why? John, the beloved disciple, was among the first to enter the tomb, seeing only the linen cloths folded neatly where the body should have been. His faith told him this was a sign of resurrection, but doubt gnawed at him. He knew the power of relics in a world where the physical remnants of holy men could inspire devotion or command loyalty. The bones of prophets had been venerated before. Elisha's bones, it was said, had raised a man from the dead. If Jesus' bones were out there, they could become a focal point for both worship and conflict. Beyond Jerusalem, the rumor of the empty tomb spread like wildfire. In Damascus, a merchant named Elihu, who traded in sacred artifacts, heard the tale from a caravan driver. Elihu was a collector of relics, a man who had built his fortune selling fragments of the true cross, splinters from Noah's Ark, and vials of what he claimed was the blood of martyrs. The possibility of Jesus' bones was too tantalizing to ignore. He dispatched agents to Jerusalem, men skilled in bribery and deception, to uncover the truth. Elihu's motives were not spiritual but commercial. He knew that possessing the bones of the man called Christ would make him wealthier than any king. But he was not alone in his pursuit. Across the Mediterranean, in the courts of petty kings and the temples of mystery cults, whispers of the missing body stirred ambition. The bones of Jesus could be a relic to rival all others, a talisman that could sway empires. In Rome, the authorities took note. The Emperor Tiberius, though distant, was informed by his spies of the growing unrest in Judea. The crucifixion was meant to quell the Jesus movement, but the empty tomb threatened to inflame it further. Pilate, under pressure to maintain order, ordered a discreet investigation. His centurion Longinus, the man said to have pierced Jesus' side with a spear, was tasked with finding the truth. Longinus was a soldier, not a believer, but he had seen something on Golgotha that day, a darkness that fell over the land, a tremor in the earth, that left him uneasy. He questioned the guards, who swore they had seen an angel, but Longinus suspected a more earthly explanation. He began to track down the disciples, hoping to uncover a plot to steal the body. What he found instead was a city teeming with rumors. The body had been taken by zealots, by priests, by Romans, even by followers of Jesus himself. The Sanhedrin, too, had their own agenda. Caiaphas, the high priest, feared the empty tomb would fuel the messianic fervor that Jesus had ignited. To discredit the resurrection claims, he spread word that the disciples had stolen the body, a lie that would persist for centuries. But privately, Caiaphas was troubled. He had overseen the trial and execution, believing it would end the threat of this Galilean preacher. Now the absence of the body suggested something more dangerous, a conspiracy that could undermine the fragile balance of power between the Jewish leaders and their Roman overlords. He sent his own agents, men loyal to the temple, to scour the city and beyond for any trace of the bones. As the days turned to weeks, the search for Jesus' bones became a silent war, fought in the shadows of Jerusalem's alleys and the deserts beyond. The zealots, led by Baruch, tracked rumors to a small village near Bethany, where a man claimed to have seen a group of cloaked figures carrying a shrouded bundle in the night. Baruch's men raided the village, but found nothing but frightened peasants and empty caves. Elihu's agents, meanwhile, bribed a Roman guard who claimed to have seen a disciple, possibly Judas, near the tomb before the stone was moved. Judas, tormented by his betrayal, had vanished, and some whispered he had taken the body as an act of penance, or to sell it for silver. The trail led Elihu's men to a market in Tyre, where a merchant offered a relic that he swore was a finger bone of the Nazarene. Elihu, ever the skeptic, tested the bone and found it to be that of a common thief, but the incident only deepened his obsession. The disciples, too, were drawn into the fray. Peter, emerging from his fear, began to preach openly of the resurrection, but privately he confided to John that he feared the body had been stolen to discredit their faith. Mary Magdalene, guided by her visions, believed Jesus was alive, yet she could not ignore the growing clamor for his physical remains. She traveled to Galilee, following a rumor that the bones had been hidden in a cave near the Sea of Tiberias. There she encountered a hermit who claimed to have guarded the tomb in secret, but he spoke in riddles, and Mary left empty-handed, her faith both strengthened and tested. In the years that followed, the secret war for Jesus' bones spread far beyond Judea. The early Christians, as they began to call themselves, faced persecution, yet their numbers grew. The absence of the body became a cornerstone of their faith, proof of the resurrection, but it also made them vulnerable to those who sought to exploit the mystery. In Alexandria, a Gnostic sect claimed to possess the true bones, using them to draw followers to their esoteric teachings. In Rome, a senator named Marcellus, intrigued by the new faith, secretly funded expeditions to find the relics, hoping to use them to gain favor with the emperor. Even in distant Britannia, Druids whispered of a holy man whose bones could heal the sick, a story carried by traders who had heard of the Nazarene. The bones, if they existed, were never definitively found. Some said they were hidden in a crypt beneath the Temple Mount, guarded by a secret order. Others claimed they were smuggled to Ethiopia, where they were venerated in a church carved from stone. Still others believed they were destroyed, burned to ash by those who feared their power. The truth remained elusive, buried beneath layers of myth and ambition. Yet the search itself shaped the world. The quest for Jesus' bones drove men to acts of courage and treachery, inspired faith and fueled doubt. It was a war fought not with swords but with whispers, not in battlefields but in the hearts of those who believed, or refused to believe. Centuries later, when Constantine embraced Christianity and the Church rose to power, the relics of saints became a currency of faith. The true cross, the Shroud of Turin, the Holy Grail, all were sought and venerated, but none carried the weight of the bones that were never found. The secret war faded into legend, its battles recorded not in history books but in the apocryphal texts and oral traditions of those who remembered. The bones of Jesus, whether they rested in a tomb or ascended to heaven, remained a mystery that defined an era, a symbol of the eternal struggle between the divine and the human, the sacred and the profane. As the first century drew to a close, the fervor surrounding Jesus' bones only intensified, weaving itself into the fabric of a burgeoning religion and the political machinations of empires. The early Christian communities scattered across Judea, Syria, and Asia Minor clung to the resurrection narrative, but the absence of a body remained a double-edged sword. It was a testament to their faith, yet also a vulnerability exploited by those who sought to control or undermine the movement. The secret war, fought in whispers and shadows, evolved into a complex web of intrigue, with new players emerging and old ones adapting to the shifting tides of power. In Antioch, a city teeming with merchants and missionaries, a charismatic preacher named Simon the Seer claimed to have visions of where the bones lay. Simon was no disciple of Jesus, but a cunning opportunist who had once dabbled in sorcery before embracing the new faith, or at least its potential for influence. He gathered a following, promising that the bones, if found, would usher in a new age of divine favor. His visions pointed to a hidden cave in the Judean hills, and he led a band of devotees to search for it. The expedition was a failure, yielding only a few ancient skeletons that Simon tried to pass off as sacred relics. His followers, disillusioned, abandoned him, but not before his claims reached the ears of a Roman official named Gaius Marcellinus. Gaius, a minor bureaucrat with ambitions far exceeding his station, saw the bones as a means to curry favor with the Emperor Nero, whose paranoia and thirst for spectacle were well known. Gaius believed that presenting Nero with the relics of the Nazarene could secure his place in the imperial court. He dispatched a team of soldiers and hired trackers to follow Simon's trail, interrogating villagers and raiding suspected hideouts. The search led them to a network of catacombs beneath Jerusalem, where early Christians were said to gather in secret. Gaius's men found no bones, but they did uncover scrolls, early Christian writings that spoke of the resurrection and the kingdom of God. Gaius, sensing their potential to stir unrest, sent them to Rome, where they were studied and later destroyed, deemed too dangerous to circulate. Meanwhile, in the deserts of Egypt, a different kind of seeker emerged. A Coptic monk named Ananias, driven by a mystic fervor, believed the bones had been spirited away by Joseph of Arimathea himself, entrusted to a hidden sect of Essenes who had long guarded sacred relics. Ananias spent years wandering the Sinai, following fragments of oral tradition and cryptic inscriptions on ancient stones. His search led him to a remote monastery near the Red Sea, where he claimed to have found a sealed ossuary inscribed with Aramaic symbols. The monks who guarded it refused him entry, warning that the contents were not meant for mortal eyes. Ananias, undeterred, spent his life transcribing what he believed were divine revelations about the bones, writings that would later influence the Gnostic texts that challenged Orthodox Christianity. Back in Jerusalem, the zealots' pursuit of the bones took a darker turn. Baruch, their leader, had grown desperate. The failure to find the relics had weakened his standing among his followers, many of whom had begun to question his leadership. In a bold move, he allied with a rogue priest named Ezra, who had been excommunicated from the Sanhedrin for his radical views. Ezra claimed to have insider knowledge of a secret vault beneath the temple, where the bones had been hidden to prevent their veneration. Together, they orchestrated a daring raid, tunneling beneath the city under the guise of repairing aqueducts. The vault, when they reached it, contained only ceremonial artifacts, golden candlesticks and ancient scrolls, but no bones. The raid, however, sparked outrage among the temple authorities, who blamed the Christians, further fueling tensions between the communities. The disciples, now led by James, the brother of Jesus, faced their own challenges. James, known as the Just, was a figure of authority in Jerusalem, striving to bridge the gap between Jewish tradition and the growing Christian movement. He publicly dismissed the relic hunters, insisting that the resurrection rendered such pursuits meaningless. Yet privately he was troubled by reports of forgeries flooding the markets. Bones, shrouds, and even nails from the cross, all claimed to be relics of Jesus. These forgeries threatened to undermine the faith, turning sacred belief into a commodity. James sent emissaries to counter these claims, but the allure of relics was too strong, and the forgeries proliferated from Damascus to Ephesus. In Rome, the search took a political turn. The Emperor Nero, intrigued by Gaius's reports, began to see the Christian movement as both a threat and an opportunity. He ordered a covert operation to locate the bones, hoping to use them to manipulate the growing sect. His agents infiltrated Christian gatherings, posing as converts to gather information. One such agent, a freedman named Lucius, befriended a young Christian named Clement, who unknowingly revealed details of the community's beliefs about the empty tomb. Lucius reported back that the Christians themselves were divided. Some believed the body had been taken to heaven, others suspected it had been hidden to protect it from desecration. Nero, frustrated by the lack of concrete evidence, turned his attention to persecuting the Christians instead, using the bones as an excuse to justify his cruelty. As the 2nd century dawned, the war for Jesus' bones began to take on mythic proportions. In Asia Minor, a wealthy widow named Lydia, who had converted to Christianity, funded a secret society dedicated to protecting what she believed were the true relics. Her agents claimed to have acquired a fragment of bone from a trader in Antioch, and she enshrined it in a hidden chapel in Ephesus. The relic drew pilgrims who reported miracles, healings, visions, and prophecies. Yet the authenticity of the bone was questioned, even by Lydia's own allies. A rival faction, led by a bishop named Ignatius, denounced the relic as a fraud, arguing that true faith required no physical proof. The dispute fractured the community, foreshadowing the theological battles that would define the early church. Farther afield, in the Parthian Empire, a merchant prince named Kava heard tales of the bones and saw an opportunity to expand his influence. Kava, who traded in silk and spices, believed that possessing such a relic could win him favor with both Christian and Jewish communities along the trade routes. He sent emissaries to Judea, offering vast sums for any trace of the bones. His agents clashed with Elihu's men, the relic hunter from Damascus, in a violent skirmish in a caravanserai near Petra. The conflict ended in a stalemate, with neither side gaining the prize, but it spread the legend of the bones deeper into the east, where they became entwined with local myths of divine kings and sacred relics. The search for the bones also shaped the emerging Christian canon. As the Gospels were written and circulated, the story of the empty tomb was carefully crafted to emphasize the resurrection over the physical remains. Yet apocryphal texts, suppressed by the Orthodox Church, told different stories. The Gospel of Nicodemus, for instance, hinted at a secret council that had hidden the body to prevent its misuse. These texts, though deemed heretical, fueled speculation and kept the war alive in the minds of those who read them. The bones became a symbol of the tension between faith and proof, between the spiritual and the material. By the time Constantine declared Christianity the religion of the Roman Empire, the war for Jesus' bones had transformed. The Church, now a political power, sought to control the narrative around relics. Helena, Constantine's mother, embarked on a quest to find the true cross, but the bones of Jesus remained elusive, their absence both a mystery and a cornerstone of faith. The secret war faded into the background, its battles fought in the margins of history. Yet the quest never truly ended. In monasteries and marketplaces, in hidden vaults and distant lands, the search for the bones of Jesus continued, a testament to the enduring power of a man whose life and death changed the world. The dawn of the 3rd century brought a new layer of complexity to the secret war for Jesus' bones. As Christianity spread further across the Roman Empire and beyond, its influence clashing with rival faiths, political powers, and the enduring allure of relics. The absence of the body, once a point of contention among the early disciples, had become a central mystery that both strengthened and divided the growing church. The war, though less visible in the open streets of Jerusalem, continued in hidden councils, desert monasteries, and the bustling markets of distant cities, where the promise of possessing Jesus' bones fueled ambition, devotion, and deception. In Constantinople, the new hub of the Roman world under Constantine's reign, the relic trade flourished. The city's markets brimmed with artifacts, splinters of wood, fragments of cloth, and bones of questionable origin, all peddled as sacred relics. A trader named Demetrius, a shrewd man with a knack for storytelling, claimed to possess a relic of Jesus himself, a single vertebra wrapped in silk and stored in an ornate reliquary. Demetrius's tale was compelling. He said the bone had been smuggled out of Judea by a disciple's descendant, passed down through a secret lineage of guardians. Pilgrims flocked to his stall, and bishops debated the relic's authenticity. The Church, wary of forgeries but eager to harness the devotion relics inspired, sent a delegation to investigate. Their verdict was inconclusive, but Demetrius's relic drew crowds, and the Church reluctantly allowed its veneration, recognizing its power to unify the faithful. Meanwhile, in the deserts of Syria, a sect known as the Ebionites, who clung to a blend of Jewish and Christian traditions, pursued their own quest for the bones. Led by a scholar named Matthias, they believed the bones had been hidden by James, the brother of Jesus, to preserve the purity of the faith from Roman corruption. Matthias pored over ancient texts, piecing together clues from apocryphal gospels and oral traditions. His search led him to a ruined synagogue near Qumran, where he uncovered a cache of scrolls but no bones. Disheartened, Matthias began to question whether the bones existed at all, or if their absence was itself a divine message. His writings, later condemned as heretical, argued that the true relic was the spirit of Jesus' teachings, not his physical remains, a view that put him at odds with the relic-obsessed culture of the time. In Rome, the Church's growing power brought new players into the fray. A senator named Valerius, a recent convert, saw the bones as a means to secure his legacy. He funded expeditions to Judea, hiring mercenaries and scholars to comb the region for clues. One such expedition stumbled upon a hidden chamber beneath the Mount of Olives, rumored to be a Christian safe house from the days of persecution. Inside, they found a stone ossuary inscribed with the name Yeshua. Valerius was elated, believing he had found the prize. But the ossuary was empty, and scholars debated whether Yeshua referred to Jesus of Nazareth or another man of the same common name. Valerius, undeterred, displayed the ossuary in his villa, claiming it as a sacred relic. The Church, however, distanced itself, wary of endorsing a relic that could spark controversy or division. Far to the east, in the Sassanid Empire, the bones became a point of diplomatic intrigue. A Christian missionary named Thomas, said to be one of the original apostles, had traveled to India, where he established small communities of believers. Rumors reached the Sassanid court that Thomas had carried with him a relic of Jesus, possibly a bone to inspire his converts. The Sassanid king Shapur I saw an opportunity to weaken Rome by controlling such a relic. He sent spies to infiltrate the Christian communities in Edessa, where Thomas was said to have passed through. The spies returned with a small bone, which Shapur enshrined in a temple to gain favor with his Christian subjects. The bone's authenticity was dubious, but its presence strengthened ties between the Sassanids and the Christian minority, complicating Rome's efforts to dominate the region. Back in Judea, the war took a mystical turn. A group of ascetics, calling themselves the Keepers of the Tomb, emerged in the hills near Jerusalem. They claimed to be descendants of those who had guarded the tomb on the night of the resurrection, entrusted with a secret passed down through generations. Their leader, a woman named Miriam, spoke of visions in which Jesus revealed the location of his bones, hidden in a cave sealed by divine light. Miriam's followers, mostly women and outcasts, lived in secrecy, avoiding both Roman authorities and the Church, which viewed their claims with suspicion. Miriam led her followers on pilgrimages to remote caves, but none yielded the promised relics. Her visions, though, inspired a wave of mystical writings that circulated among early Christian communities, blending the search for the bones with apocalyptic prophecies. The Church, now a formidable institution, sought to control the narrative. Bishops like Irenaeus denounced the proliferation of relics, arguing that faith in the resurrection required no physical proof. Yet the allure of relics was unstoppable, and the Church began to embrace them, carefully curating which ones were deemed authentic. The bones of martyrs like Peter and Paul became focal points of worship, but the absence of Jesus' bones remained a silent challenge. To counter this, the Church emphasized the true cross, discovered by Helena, as the ultimate relic. Yet whispers persisted that the bones were out there, hidden by those who feared their power or revered their sanctity. In the 4th century, as Christianity became the state religion, the secret war shifted to the intellectual realm. Theologians debated the nature of the resurrection, whether it was bodily or spiritual, and what it meant for the bones to be absent. Origen, a scholar in Alexandria, argued that the physical body was irrelevant, a mere vessel for the divine spirit. His views, though influential, were later condemned as the Church sought to unify its doctrine. Meanwhile, relic hunters continued their quests, driven by faith, greed, or curiosity. In Gaul, a merchant claimed to have found a bone in a shipwreck off the coast, said to have been smuggled from Judea. In Ethiopia, a church claimed to guard the bones in a secret chamber accessible only to a chosen few. Each claim added to the mythos, but none could be verified. The war for Jesus' bones, though never resolved, left an indelible mark on history. It shaped the early Church's struggle to define itself, fueled the relic trade that funded cathedrals and crusades, and inspired countless stories of faith and betrayal. The bones, whether they existed or not, became a symbol of the eternal quest for proof in a world of mystery. As centuries passed, the search faded into legend, but the questions it raised, about faith, power, and the nature of the divine, endured, whispered in the halls of churches and the hearts of seekers, a war fought not for bones but for the soul of a new world. As the 4th century unfolded, the secret war for Jesus' bones evolved into a multifaceted struggle, entwining theology, politics, and the burgeoning relic trade that defined the Christian world. The Roman Empire, now under Christian emperors, sought to consolidate its spiritual and temporal power, but the absence of Jesus' bones remained a persistent enigma, a void that invited both reverence and exploitation. The war, though no longer fought in the shadows of Jerusalem's alleys, had spread to the grand basilicas of Constantinople, the monasteries of Egypt, and the trade routes stretching to the edges of the known world. In Constantinople, the relic trade reached new heights, fueled by the city's status as the New Rome. Merchants like Demetrius, whose vertebra had sparked a frenzy, faced increasing competition. A rival trader, a woman named Theodora, claimed to possess a fragment of Jesus' skull, acquired, she said, from a Bedouin trader who had found it in a Judean cave. Theodora's relic, housed in a silver reliquary adorned with sapphires, drew pilgrims from as far as Britannia. The Church, wary of endorsing unverified relics, sent a council of bishops to examine it. Their tests, based on little more than prayer and intuition, yielded no consensus, but Theodora's charisma and wealth ensured her relic remained a focal point of devotion. Her success inspired a wave of forgeries as artisans across the empire turned out bones, cloths, and thorns, each accompanied by a tale of divine provenance. In Alexandria, the intellectual heart of early Christianity, the war took a philosophical turn. Theologians like Athanasius grappled with the implications of the missing bones. The resurrection, a cornerstone of Christian doctrine, was increasingly defined as a spiritual event, yet the physical absence of Jesus' body posed a challenge. A group of scholars influenced by Gnostic ideas argued that the bones had been hidden by divine will to prevent their worship, which they saw as idolatry. Their leader, a monk named Clement, wrote treatises claiming the true relic was the Word of God, not physical remains. These ideas clashed with the growing cult of relics, and Clement's writings were suppressed, his followers driven to the margins. Yet their ideas persisted, whispered in hidden gatherings, influencing later debates about the nature of the divine. In the West, the war manifested in the ambitions of the Roman elite. A noblewoman named Flavia, a descendant of Valerius, sought to outdo her ancestor by funding a grand expedition to Judea. She hired a team of explorers, including a Jewish scholar named Ezra ben Judah, who claimed knowledge of ancient Essene hiding places. Ezra, driven by a desire to preserve his people's history, led the expedition to a series of caves near the Dead Sea. There they uncovered fragments of scrolls and pottery, but no bones. Flavia, undeterred, commissioned a reliquary to house a bone she purchased from a Damascus merchant, claiming it was Jesus. The relic was enshrined in a new church in Ravenna, drawing pilgrims and cementing Flavia's status as a patron of the faith. The church, though skeptical, allowed the relic's veneration, recognizing its power to fund ecclesiastical projects. Far to the south, in Aksum, the emerging Christian kingdom of Ethiopia, the bones became a matter of royal intrigue. King Izana, newly converted to Christianity, heard tales of a relic guarded in a mountain monastery. His advisors, eager to legitimize his rule, urged him to claim it as a sign of divine favor. Izana sent a delegation to the monastery, where monks presented a sealed ossuary said to contain Jesus' bones, brought to Ethiopia by a disciple centuries earlier. The monks refused to open it, citing a sacred oath, but allowed Izana to build a grand church to house it. The Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion became a pilgrimage site, and the legend of the bones strengthened Aksum's claim as a center of Christian faith, rivaling Rome and Constantinople. In the East, the war intersected with the rise of Manichaeism, a syncretic faith that blended Christian, Zoroastrian, and Buddhist elements. Mani, its founder, claimed to have received visions of Jesus' bones hidden in a cave in Persia. His followers, seeking to bolster their prophet's authority, launched expeditions to find them. One such expedition, led by a disciple named Barzanes, clashed with Sassanid authorities, who saw the search as a threat to their control over Christian communities. The conflict ended in Barzanes' execution, but his martyrdom only fueled Manichaean devotion, and the legend of the bones spread further, entwined with tales of Mani's own relics. The war also shaped the Christian underground. In Rome, catacomb communities, still wary of persecution despite Constantine's edicts, guarded their own secrets. A group calling themselves the Custodians of the Truth claimed to possess a finger bone of Jesus, passed down from the first disciples. Their leader, a woman named Priscilla, led clandestine rituals in the catacombs, where the bone was venerated as a symbol of resistance against the imperial church. When word of their activities reached the bishops, Priscilla and her followers were branded heretics, and their relic was seized. The bone, later deemed a forgery, was destroyed, but the custodian's defiance inspired other secret societies, each claiming to protect the true relics. By the 5th century, the war for Jesus' bones had become a global phenomenon, its echoes felt from Ireland to India. In Ireland, a monk named Patrick, newly arrived to spread the faith, heard tales of a holy relic brought by traders from the East. He dismissed them as pagan superstition, focusing instead on converting the local tribes. Yet the stories persisted, blending with Celtic myths of sacred bones that could heal or curse. In India, Christian communities in Kerala, founded by Thomas, venerated a relic said to be Jesus' tooth, housed in a small church. The tooth drew pilgrims, but its origins were murky, tied to the same trade routes that carried spices and silk. The church, now a dominant force, sought to redirect the obsession with Jesus' bones to other relics. The discovery of the bones of Stephen, the first martyr, and the proliferation of martyr shrines shifted attention away from the missing body. Yet the legend of Jesus' bones endured, fueled by apocryphal texts and oral traditions. The Acts of Thomas, for instance, hinted at a secret mission to hide the bones in a distant land, while the Gospel of Mary Magdalene suggested she had been entrusted with their care. These texts, though suppressed, kept the war alive in the imaginations of the faithful. As the centuries passed, the secret war transformed into a cultural force, shaping art, literature, and theology. Icons depicting the empty tomb became central to Christian worship, a reminder of the mystery at the heart of the faith. The bones, whether real or imagined, remained a symbol of the eternal tension between the tangible and the divine, the earthly and the eternal. The war was no longer about finding the bones but about what they represented, a quest for truth in a world of uncertainty, a battle fought not with swords or gold, but with faith, doubt, and the stories that bound them together. The war, now centuries old, had transcended its origins, becoming a tapestry of faith, power, and myth that stretched from the courts of Byzantium to the edges of the known world. In Constantinople, the relic trade had become a cornerstone of the city's economy and spiritual life. The Emperor Justinian, seeking to solidify his rule, invested heavily in acquiring relics to adorn his grand churches, particularly the Hagia Sophia. A merchant named Nicetas, claiming descent from Theodora, presented Justinian with a relic he swore was Jesus' forearm bone, said to have been smuggled from Jerusalem by a soldier who had guarded the tomb. Nicetas's tale was elaborate. The bone had been hidden in a Syrian monastery, passed through generations of monks, and finally sold to him by a desperate abbot. Justinian, eager to outshine his predecessors, had the bone enshrined in a golden reliquary, where it drew throngs of pilgrims. Skeptics within the church, including the Patriarch Eutychius, questioned its authenticity, citing inconsistencies in Nicetas's story. Yet the relic's popularity made it untouchable, and its presence bolstered Justinian's image as a divine ruler. In the West, the collapse of the Western Roman Empire gave rise to new players in the war. In Gaul, a Frankish king named Clovis, newly converted to Christianity, sought to legitimize his reign by acquiring relics. His advisors, aware of the power of Jesus' bones, sent emissaries to the Holy Land to investigate rumors of a hidden crypt near Bethlehem. The expedition, led by a monk named Remigius, uncovered a series of tombs, one bearing an inscription that hinted at a connection to Jesus. The tomb was empty, but Remigius returned with a fragment of linen said to have wrapped the body. Clovis, undeterred by the lack of bones, used the linen to rally his subjects, declaring it a sign of divine favor. The relic, displayed in a church in Reims, became a symbol of Frankish unity, even as scholars debated its origins. In Egypt, the war took a mystical turn. The Coptic Church, now a distinct entity, embraced the legend of the bones as part of its identity. A monk named Shenut, known for his fiery sermons, claimed to have received visions of a cave where the bones were guarded by angels. Shenut's followers, a mix of ascetics and lay people, embarked on pilgrimages to the deserts of Upper Egypt, searching for the cave. Their quests yielded no physical relics, but Shenut's visions inspired a wave of Coptic art, depicting the empty tomb as a portal to the divine. These images, painted on monastery walls, reinforced the idea that the bones' absence was itself a miracle, a sign that Jesus had transcended the material world. In the East, the war intersected with the rise of Islam. As Arab tribes began to unify under Muhammad's teachings, Christian communities in Arabia faced new pressures. A Christian merchant in Mecca, named Bahira, claimed to possess a relic of Jesus, a finger bone said to have been brought from Edessa. Bahira used the relic to gain influence among local Christians, but his claims drew the attention of Arab leaders, who saw the relic as a potential threat to their authority. When Bahira was killed in a raid, the relic vanished, and rumors spread that it had been taken to a secret sanctuary in the desert. The story of the bone, though unverified, became part of early Islamic Christian dialogue, with some Muslim scholars citing it as evidence of Jesus' humanity, while Christians insisted on its divine significance. In Byzantium, the war took a political turn. The Empress Theodora, Justinian's wife, was a devout Christian with a passion for relics. She funded a secret mission to Jerusalem, led by a scholar named Procopius, to uncover the truth about the bones. Procopius, known for his skeptical histories, approached the task with caution, interviewing aging monks and scouring ancient texts. His search led him to a hidden chamber beneath the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where he found a sealed ossuary inscribed with cryptic symbols. The ossuary was empty, but Procopius's report to Theodora suggested it had once held something of great importance. Theodora, undeterred, declared the ossuary a sacred relic, and it was brought to Constantinople, where it was venerated alongside the true cross. The war also shaped the emerging Christian literature. Apocryphal texts such as the Acts of Pilate circulated widely, offering tantalizing clues about the bones. One passage claimed that Joseph of Arimathea had hidden the body in a cave near the Jordan River, guarded by a secret order. These texts, though dismissed by the Church, fueled speculation and inspired relic hunters. In Rome, a scribe named Marcellinus compiled a collection of such stories, hoping to preserve them for posterity. His work, later hidden in a monastery, became a source of fascination for medieval scholars, who saw the bones as a key to understanding the early Church. In the far reaches of the world, the war took on local flavors. In Armenia, a king named Tiridates, converted by Gregory the Illuminator, heard tales of a relic brought by Thaddeus, one of Jesus' disciples. The relic, said to be a rib bone, was enshrined in a church in Echmidzin, where it became a symbol of Armenian Christianity. In Ireland, monks spoke of a bone carried by a missionary from Gaul, said to have miraculous powers. These stories, though unverified, strengthened local Christian identities, tying distant communities to the central mystery of the faith. By the 7th century, the war for Jesus' bones had become a cultural and spiritual force. Its battles fought not only in physical searches but in the realm of ideas. The Church, now a global institution, sought to channel the obsession with relics into approved channels, promoting the veneration of saints' bones while downplaying the search for Jesus. Yet the legend persisted, woven into the fabric of Christian art, liturgy, and folklore. The bones, whether they existed or not, became a metaphor for the eternal quest for connection to the divine, a war that reshaped empires and souls alike. As the centuries rolled on, the secret war faded into the background, its stories blending with the myths of the Holy Grail and the Shroud of Turin. Yet it never truly ended. In hidden monasteries, secret societies, and the hearts of the faithful, the search for Jesus' bones continued, a testament to the enduring power of a mystery that refused to be solved. The war was no longer about finding the bones but about what they represented. A bridge between the human and the divine, a relic of a faith that had changed the world. As the 7th century unfolded, the secret war for Jesus' bones entered a new phase, shaped by the seismic shifts of a world in transition. The Byzantine Empire, though still a Christian stronghold, faced mounting pressures from the rising tide of Islam, while in the West, barbarian kingdoms carved out new identities under the banner of the Church. The bones of Jesus, an elusive prize, remained a potent symbol, their absence fueling both devotion and division. The war, now centuries old, had become a complex dance of faith, power, and myth, fought in the courts of emperors, the cells of monks, and the hearts of pilgrims who sought a tangible connection to the divine. In Constantinople, the relic trade flourished under the Emperor Heraclius, who saw relics as a means to rally his empire against external threats. A merchant named Anastasius, claiming to have inherited Niceta's network, presented the court with a relic he swore was Jesus' collarbone, acquired from a hermit in the Judean desert. Anastasius's story was intricate. The bone had been hidden by a disciple in a cave near Jericho, guarded by a line of ascetics who passed it down through generations. Heraclius, desperate for divine favor as he faced Persian invasions, had the bone enshrined in a new chapel within the Hagia Sophia. The relic drew crowds, but its authenticity was questioned by scholars like Maximus the Confessor, who argued that true faith required no physical relics. Despite the skepticism, the bone's presence bolstered morale, and Heraclius used it to inspire his troops, claiming it as a sign of God's protection. In the West, the war took root among the Visigothic kings of Hispania. King Reccared, a recent convert to Catholicism from Arianism, sought to unify his kingdom through Christian symbols. He dispatched a team of monks to Jerusalem, led by a scholar named Isidore of Seville, to investigate rumors of a hidden crypt in the Kidron Valley. Isidore, a meticulous historian, approached the task with caution, recording every detail of his journey. His team uncovered a series of tombs, one bearing an inscription that hinted at a connection to the early Christians. Though no bones were found, Isidore returned with a fragment of stone said to be from the tomb, which Reccared enshrined in a church in Toledo. The stone became a focal point of Visigothic worship, its origins debated but its power undeniable. In Egypt, the Coptic Church continued to weave the legend of the bones into its spiritual identity. A monk named John of Nikiu, chronicling the history of his people, recorded tales of a secret order that guarded a relic in a monastery near Alexandria. The relic, said to be a fragment of Jesus' spine, was kept in a sealed chamber accessible only to the monastery's abbot. When Muslim forces began their conquest of Egypt, the monks hid the relic, fearing its desecration. John's writings, preserved in Coptic archives, suggested that the relic was smuggled to a desert outpost, where it remained hidden. The story inspired Coptic resistance, with the bones becoming a symbol of defiance against foreign rule. In the Arabian Peninsula, the rise of Islam reshaped the war's dynamics. Christian communities, now under Muslim governance, faced new challenges in preserving their relics. A bishop in Nadran, named Simeon, claimed to possess a knuckle bone of Jesus, passed down from Bahira's followers. Simeon used the relic to maintain his community's cohesion, but its existence drew the attention of local Muslim authorities, who viewed it with suspicion. Rather than destroy it, they allowed its veneration under strict conditions, recognizing its importance to their Christian subjects. The bone's story spread, influencing early Islamic texts that debated Jesus' role as a prophet, with some scholars citing the relic as evidence of his human mortality. In Byzantium, the war took a scholarly turn. A theologian named Leontius of Jerusalem, tasked with cataloging sacred relics, began to question the proliferation of bones claimed to be Jesus. He argued that the resurrection rendered such relics unnecessary, a view that put him at odds with the relic trade's powerful patrons. Leontius's writings, preserved in monastic libraries, influenced later debates about the nature of relics, but his warnings went unheeded. The Church, under pressure to maintain its authority, continued to endorse relics, even as forgeries multiplied. A rival scholar, Anastasius of Sinai, countered Leontius, claiming to have uncovered a document in a Palestinian monastery that described a secret burial of Jesus' bones by the apostles. The document, likely a forgery, fueled new expeditions with relic hunters scouring the Sinai for clues. In the far reaches of the Christian world, the war took on local hues. In Georgia, a Christian kingdom emerging in the Caucasus, a queen named Tamar funded a mission to Jerusalem, hoping to find the bones and cement her realm's place in Christendom. Her agents returned with a small bone, said to have been found in a cave near Golgotha. The bone was enshrined in a church in Skita, where it drew pilgrims and strengthened Georgia's ties to Byzantium. In Ireland, monks at Glendalough spoke of a relic brought by a pilgrim from Rome, claimed to be a fragment of Jesus' foot. The relic, though dubious, inspired a wave of Celtic Christian art, depicting the empty tomb as a symbol of resurrection and hope. The war also influenced the growing body of apocryphal literature. The Acts of Andrew, circulating in Greece, hinted at a secret mission to hide Jesus' bones in a distant land, possibly Scythia. The text, though dismissed by the Church, inspired relic hunters to venture into the steppes, where they clashed with local tribes. In Ethiopia, the Kebra Nagast, an emerging national epic, wove the legend of the bones into its narrative, claiming they were guarded alongside the Ark of the Covenant. These stories, blending fact and myth, kept the war alive in the collective imagination, even as the Church sought to suppress them. By the 8th century, the war for Jesus' bones had become a global phenomenon, its threads woven into the fabric of Christian, Muslim, and even pagan cultures. The Church, now a political and spiritual juggernaut, sought to redirect the obsession with Jesus' bones to saints' relics, which were easier to control. Yet the legend persisted, fueled by tales of miracles, visions, and hidden crypts. The bones, whether real or imagined, remained a symbol of the eternal quest for the divine, a war fought not with armies but with stories, faith, and the unyielding human desire to touch the sacred. As the world changed, the search for Jesus' bones endured, a mystery that shaped the soul of an era and the centuries that followed. As the 8th century dawned, the secret war for Jesus' bones entered a new era, shaped by the shifting tides of empires and the deepening roots of Christianity across diverse lands. The Byzantine Empire, battered by wars with the expanding Umayyad Caliphate, clung to its Christian identity, while in the West, the Carolingian dynasty sought to forge a new Christian empire. The bones of Jesus, though still unfound, remained a potent symbol, their absence a mystery that inspired both reverence and rivalry. The war, now a centuries-long saga, had transcended its origins in Jerusalem, weaving itself into the spiritual, political, and cultural currents of a fractured world. In Constantinople, the relic trade reached fever pitch under the Emperor Leo III, whose iconoclastic policies sparked fierce debates about the veneration of physical objects. Amid this turmoil, a merchant named Theophanes claimed to possess a relic of Jesus' rib, said to have been discovered in a hidden crypt beneath the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Theophanes' story was compelling. The bone had been safeguarded by a secret order of monks, passed down through generations to avoid Roman persecution. Leo, wary of relics fueling idolatry, ordered an investigation, but Theophanes' wealth and connections ensured the relic's survival. It was enshrined in a small chapel, drawing pilgrims who believed it could heal the sick. The Church, divided by iconoclasm, reluctantly tolerated the relic, recognizing its power to unify the faithful against external threats. In the West, the Carolingian king Charlemagne, crowned Holy Roman Emperor in 800, saw relics as a tool to legitimize his rule. His court, a hub of learning and piety, buzzed with tales of Jesus' bones. Charlemagne dispatched a scholar named Alcuin to Jerusalem, tasked with investigating rumors of a hidden tomb near the Garden of Gethsemane. Alcuin, a meticulous researcher, uncovered a series of ancient ossuaries, one bearing an inscription that hinted at a connection to Jesus. The ossuary was empty, but Alcuin returned with a fragment of cloth said to be from the tomb's lining. Charlemagne, ever the strategist, used the cloth to bolster his image as a defender of the faith, enshrining it in his cathedral at Aachen. The relic, though its origins were uncertain, became a symbol of Carolingian authority, drawing pilgrims and cementing the empire's Christian identity. In the east, the war intersected with the rise of the Abbasid Caliphate, which had replaced the Umayyads. Christian communities under Muslim rule, particularly in Baghdad, faced new pressures but also opportunities. A Nestorian bishop named Timothy I, a skilled diplomat, claimed to possess a relic of Jesus' finger bone, acquired from a trader in Edessa. Timothy used the relic to strengthen his community's ties to the Abbasid court, presenting it as a gesture of goodwill. The caliph, intrigued but skeptical, allowed its veneration, seeing it as a way to placate his Christian subjects. The bone's story spread, influencing Christian-Muslim dialogues and shaping early Islamic views of Jesus as a revered prophet. Yet its authenticity remained a point of contention, with some Nestorians arguing it was a forgery meant to curry favor. In Ethiopia, the legend of the bones grew ever more entwined with the nation's Christian identity. The Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion, said to house a relic of Jesus, became a pilgrimage site of unparalleled importance. A monk named Gevre, claiming descent from the guardians of the relic, wrote a chronicle asserting that the bones had been brought to Aksum by a disciple named Philip. The chronicle, blending history and myth, described a secret chamber beneath the church accessible only to a select few. When Muslim traders began to visit Aksum, the relic's existence was whispered as a source of divine protection, strengthening Ethiopia's resolve to remain a Christian stronghold in a changing world. In the Byzantine hinterlands, the war took a mystical turn. A group of monks in Cappadocia, known as the Guardians of the Light, claimed to have received visions of Jesus' bones hidden in a cave near Mount Ararat. Their leader, a hermit named Simeon, led pilgrimages to the site, where they uncovered a small bone wrapped in linen. Simeon declared it a divine gift, and the bone was enshrined in a rock-hewn church, drawing devotees from across Anatolia. The church, wary of unverified relics, sent a delegation to investigate, but Simeon's visions and the bone's reported miracles made it difficult to suppress. The relic became a symbol of resistance against iconoclastic policies, fueling a resurgence of icon veneration in the region. The war also shaped the literary and artistic traditions of the time. In Ireland, monks at Iona produced illuminated manuscripts that depicted the empty tomb as a radiant void, a symbol of both absence and presence. These manuscripts, carried by missionaries to the continent, spread the legend of the bones, blending Celtic and Christian motifs. In Syria, a poet named Ephrem composed hymns that alluded to a hidden relic, guarded by angels in a desert sanctuary. His work, though controversial, inspired a wave of devotional poetry that kept the mystery alive in Christian communities under Muslim rule. In Rome, the war took a political turn. Pope Leo III, seeking to assert his authority over the Carolingians, funded a secret expedition to Jerusalem, led by a monk named Paschal. Paschal's mission was to uncover evidence of the bones to counter Charlemagne's growing influence. He returned with a small bone, said to have been found in a crypt near Bethany, but its authenticity was immediately challenged. The bone was enshrined in a Roman church, but its veneration was limited, overshadowed by the relics of Peter and Paul. Paschal's failure to secure a definitive relic weakened Rome's position, but the expedition's records, preserved in the Vatican archives, fueled later quests. By the 9th century, the war for Jesus' bones had become a global phenomenon, its echoes felt in the courts of emperors, the monasteries of monks, and the markets of merchants. The Church, now a dominant force, sought to channel the obsession with relics into controlled forms of worship, promoting the veneration of saints' bones while downplaying the search for Jesus. Yet the legend endured. woven into apocryphal texts, oral traditions, and the dreams of the faithful. The bones, whether real or mythic, remained a symbol of the eternal quest for the divine, a war fought not with swords but with stories, faith, and the unyielding human desire to grasp the sacred in a world of uncertainty. As the centuries marched on, the search for Jesus' bones continued to shape the Christian world, a mystery that refused to fade, its power enduring in the hearts of those who sought it. As the centuries wore on, the fire dimmed, but it never died. By the turn of the 10th century, the Christian world had transformed. New empires rose, old powers faded, and the obsession with relics spread like smoke across continents. The war for Jesus' bones no longer belonged to a few emperors or priests. It had become a quiet undercurrent, an unspoken thread that tied cathedrals to deserts, parchment to pilgrimage, and power to belief. In a crumbling monastery near Tours, an aged monk named Brother Anselm spent his final years copying old texts, some official, some forbidden. Among them, a faded parchment hinted at a relic smuggled west during the Crusades to come. It spoke not of certainty but of possibility, that the bones of the man once nailed to a Roman cross had never rested in one place, but were scattered, hidden, perhaps even destroyed, not to protect them but to protect us from what their discovery might mean. In Baghdad, beneath the Abbasid golden domes, Christian scribes still whispered the story of Timothy and the finger bone, but with new meaning, not as proof of divinity but as a bridge between faiths. The bone long gone had become a metaphor. The search itself, the yearning, it was what bound humanity together. In Ethiopia, at Our Lady Mary of Zion, the guardians still refused to open the chamber. Not to emperors, not to pilgrims, not even to their own bishops. One whispered, "If the bones are real, then faith would no longer need faith." And so the mystery remained sealed, not out of fear but out of reverence for the unknown. By the time the High Middle Ages arrived and the Crusaders spilled into the Holy Land with blood and banners, the war for Jesus' bones had faded into myth, buried beneath cathedrals, politics, and ritual. Yet deep within the Vatican archives, in sealed cabinets only the popes would touch, lay fragments of a dozen relics, ribs, cloths, nails, all once claimed to be his, each locked away, unverified, untouched, because the Church had learned a final, enduring truth. Some relics are too powerful to prove. Some mysteries are stronger when unanswered. And some wars never end, they simply go quiet. And so the story does not close. The bones of Jesus may never be found. But the search for them, the faith, the power, the need to believe something lies just beyond the veil. That war still rages. Just not in the streets, not in tombs, but in the human heart.